When did the police tell you that they had that recording?
I believe in January 2012. So I was home alone. Then somebody was knocking on my door. And there was 4 police there. I was like, what? No. So they asked if they could come in. I was like, for what? But I knew 2 of the officers for sure that were on Project Care. So we went inside. One sat on this side and one on the other side of me. And we need to tell you something, he said. And I was like, what? I knew it was about Amber, obviously. He said, Amber is dead. Just like that. I was like, Amber's dead. Then I must have went into shock or something because nothing, I just sat there. Then all of a sudden I was just like, well, where is she? I want to see her. They said, you can't see her because we don't know where she is. I was like, go to my apartment. You come here and tell me that, but you guys don't know where she is. So then I called Paul right away. Mom will be over there, he said. We're coming on the road. So they did come in. So the police waited like the next day. And that time they told us, keep writing on Facebook like you're talking to Amber like she's alive. Oh boy, my sons, they were just getting mad at the police. So they were saying that Amber was deceased, but there was no body. See how messed up the whole case was?
We don't know why the police knew for sure Amber was dead, and they still have never said. But what you can hear on the recording is very ominous. The tape is 14 minutes, 52 seconds long. In it, Amber's in a vehicle with a man she doesn't know. She obviously doesn't know where she is or where he's taking her. And she sounds more and more scared as the recording goes on. The RCMP brought her family to the police station and played the full recording for them.
Me and my son, Conrad, we were the first ones to hear that. Holy shit, I didn't know how long we stayed at the police station because we kept stopping it. Stop, stop. Even that, like, how the hell they got that phone call, right? By chance or what? I mean, after how many years later?
This is In Her Defense, 50th Street. Episode 3, in Cree, kîkwây, mîtosak, ê-kiskêyihtahkik. In English, What the Trees Know. Releasing the tape was really unusual. Police in Canada just don't do things like this. They don't release mugshots, 911 tapes, arrest reports. Almost nothing about a crime is made public until it goes to court. So deciding to release this tape was a big deal. Here's the former RCMP officer, John Respett, again.
I know that we struggled heavily with what to do, with the recording. Obviously, it was investigated as thoroughly as possible. We exhausted every conceivable avenue of investigation and direction, and we're really left with, it was an option, obviously, that was discussed, was the release publicly of the tape, but the implications of something like that were enormous, and we recognized that. The decision to release was agonizing because, many factors were at play there. Amber's voice was clear on the recording, as was the other unidentified individual. A lot of implications there in terms of how the family would react, how the public would react. But again, no stone unturned. That was something that we felt ultimately at the end of the day we had to do because, again, we had not identified the individual that was on the other side of that recording.
The police put together a version of the recording that was about a minute long, a series of excerpts edited together. In a filmed statement, an RCMP officer was standing outside near the motel where Amber was last seen.
This is the missing persons case of Amber Tuckero, a 21-year-old female who went missing in August of 2010. We know that between 7:30 and 8 o'clock p.m., Amber got into a vehicle with an unknown male. While in that vehicle, Amber received a phone call, and through investigative means, we have obtained a recording of that phone call. That recording includes the voice of the unknown male driver of the vehicle. To date, that individual is unidentified. We're asking the public's assistance to listen to the tape in hopes that someone recognizes the male voice of the driver and phones investigators with that information. This audio clip may be disturbing to some listeners, but it's important that the public listens to the voice and helps investigators identify the driver of that vehicle.
Where are we by?
We're just heading south of Beaumont, or north of Beaumont.
We're heading north of Beaumont. Yo, where are we going?
Just
No, this is a... Are you fucking kidding me? You better not be taking me anywhere I don't want to go. I want to go into the city. Jeez. Yo, we're not going into the city, are we?
We're going.
No, we're not.
Yes.
Then where the fuck are these roads going to?
50th Street.
50th Street. Are you sure?
Absolutely.
Yo, where are we going?
50th Street.
50th Street.
50th Street.
East, right?
East.
Over down.
Bravo.
Bravo.
At a news conference about the tape, Tootsie sat at a table flanked by RCMP officers. I was there. I still remember how Tootsie left the room sobbing when the recording was played. Here's a clip from a news story that ran on the Aboriginal People's Television Network.
For Amber's mother, listening to the recording is excruciating. She's spent the past 2 years raising Amber's little boy. She says it took a year to convince the RCMP that her daughter wasn't just another missing Aboriginal woman.
Please listen to the man's voice. And if you recognize him, call the police. Please. Please help us bring Amber home.
I was back at that very same place at RCMP headquarters this spring for another press conference about murdered women. This time, police were announcing that they'd identified a serial killer who killed 4 women in Alberta. Paul texted me about it. Wonder if my sister is one of the 4. She wasn't. The cases were from the 1970s and had been unsolved for almost 50 years. But when I was there, I ran into Rob Drinkwater, a reporter I know. And almost immediately, he started talking about Amber and that press conference from 2012 when they released The Voice. He still remembered that day vividly, too.
Well, it's not often that you're hearing what sounds like the last words of a person alive, and it sounded like she knew something was wrong, and that was disturbing just to listen to.
Yeah.
So.
How many, have you listened to that recording since then? Do you ever hear it or listen to it?
Heard it a couple of times, yeah.
Having not heard it for a while, what do you remember about it?
I remember the sound of the man's voice, and I remember him saying, "This is 50th Street. It's 50th Street." And she was expressing doubts that they were on 50th Street and heading north towards Edmonton. And that's what I remember. And when I listen again, I keep trying to think, do I know that voice? And it must have been very difficult for them to, because the family was sitting here too. And I remember that. And that must have been just awful for them. And incredibly brave, I think, of them too, to sit here with strangers who are then going to tell the story. That must have been hard.
What do you remember about the time when they released the tape? The Voice?
I don't know, it just made me cry all the time. It just broke my heart over and over. Because I knew what was at the end of the phone call. Till today, I can't make myself go to Amber's last few moments. I just can't. Still get nightmares about that, where I can never catch up to her, like we're running in the bush like thing.
You know what is really sad? Like, I remember the 2-year mark after the news about her. I remember laying in bed one day, and I remember thinking, I'm like, I can't remember the sound of her voice. It wasn't even 2 days after that morning that I woke up. I literally heard her voice in the worst way ever, and that was when that recording came out. I heard it on Facebook.
And you just saw, like, it was being shared, maybe someone shared a news story or something?
Her mom shared it, actually. That's how I seen it. It was from her mom's Facebook.
What was that like to hear that?
It really messed me up. It really, really, really messed me up. And you know what? Amber was a fighter. Her hands were huge. Like, one thing I remember about her, she could fight and her hands were huge. So I know in my heart that she put up a fight. I know for a fact she would have. She wouldn't have let... This man must have been huge. He had to have been big because she's got big brothers. Her brother Paul's huge. Like, those guys, like, used to roughhouse her so much. Like, Amber was tough. She was strong. And I know for a fact she would have fought back. She had brothers street brothers. Her girl with 5 brothers, of course you're going to know how to fight.
Yeah.
I know she was strong. I know she fought back. I know she would have fought. And that way, that brings me a little bit of peace because I know Amber.
The recording was released on August 28th, 2012. And then 3 days later, on the first day of September, some kids riding horses on a trail outside Edmonton spotted something white in the grass. Amber's remains had been found.
I can go on the outside, it doesn't matter. I wasn't sure if we were still going out to Leduc County, so I did bring some tobacco to offer, and I brought some smudge, like some sage.
Wonderful. Yeah, we would like to if that.
This is April Eve Weiberg. She's a survivor of violence and sexual exploitation and has become an advocate for missing and murdered Indigenous people. She's also a member of the MMIWG Cree Nation in Fort Chipewyan, and she connected with Tutsi after Amber went missing. Even though she never knew Amber in life, she's come to feel like a sister.
We brought some tobacco that I wanted to offer to you as well. We do really appreciate your willingness to talk about this in particular, and it must be so difficult to be out there doing this work, advocating. We're doing everything we can to tell Amber's story in a good and respectful way, and we do hope that it will help in some way.
Great, thank you. Well, I'll accept this on behalf of the Tepero family as well, the other families that have been affected by this crisis. So thank you.
Thank you.
We offered tobacco to Amber's family, elders, and other knowledge keepers before our interviews. That means we brought ceremonial tobacco and we wrapped it in bundles of red cotton and ribbon. This is quite different from how journalism usually works. Tobacco is sacred in many Indigenous cultures, including Cree culture. We offered it as a sign of respect and as a request for help in telling Amber's story.
So if you want to go to, if you want to go to Nisku Place Hotel, we just need to turn around, and at that last intersection we passed.
We drove 45 minutes out of town and stopped at the Nisku Place Motel, the last place Amber was seen alive.
Yeah, so we're right now pulling into the parking lot of the Nisku Place Motel. And it looks very dated. It's probably been around for several decades. But this was where Amber and Evangeline and Jacob had rented a room. What's never really been known is why, and I don't know if this was Evangeline on her own or Evangeline and Amber, but why did they choose to stay out in Nisku? Because according to Tutsi, when Evangeline and Amber were planning to come into Edmonton, it was for medical, but they were planning to take Jacob to West Edmonton Mall. So why would they stay way out here?
Yeah, this is a very strange motel to stay at. I'm sure it's cheap, it looks inexpensive, but also there are many inexpensive hotels in Edmonton, and
there's other motels there, right?
Yeah.
Nisku is an industrial area near the Edmonton airport, and it's busy with travelers and workers passing through. We stopped at the gas station just around the corner from the motel, and we sat in the car for a few minutes, watching men come and go.
So often, like when I'm near the airport or at the airport or in this area of Nisku industrial area, it always feels very cold to me. Like even in the summer, like it just feels really, you know, there's like a heavy energy here. But often when I'm out here, like I'll look, like that man that just came out of the store, that man that just got out of this pickup truck, like I look at these men like, is that the man? Is that the voice? Right? Does he know what happened to Amber? Like, it's like I'm on high alert out here.
Do you remember the first time you heard that recording?
I do. Like it never gets, like, I've never been just numb to it. Even if I heard it now, I would probably get quite emotional because I can only imagine like what was going through Amber's mind at that time. Like I was told she was very tough, but you could hear the fear in her voice when she realizes that he is not driving her to Edmonton, that he's actually going the opposite way, and she's recognizing what's going on. I can relate to that, right? And as a mother, she was very much most likely thinking in that moment of Jacob and what if Jacob was safe and what was happening with Jacob, right? If she would see Jacob again. Like I hate whoever is behind that voice, because as a survivor of violence, survivor of homicide even, I've heard that voice before, like in my own situations, right? Where like when I hear him, he sounds so self-assured of what he is intending to do. So now we are going east down Airport Road, kind of heading towards the outskirts of Nisku. And this is the route that the RCMP believe that Amber was on when the driver was supposedly driving her to 50th Street into Edmonton.
April Eve was taking us to where Amber's remains were found. She's been there many times. She was with Amber's family when police took them there.
So the industrial town has given way to rural area, farmland, little lines of trees.
So you want to slow down here because we're going to go down this gravel road here to the left. Yeah. So we're now approaching the field where Amber's remains were found.
The days are long in the summer in Edmonton, and in August, the sun doesn't set until past 9. As Amber was being taken down these roads, it would have still been light out.
Now, the last time I was out here, there was a no trespassing sign, like on the side of the field, but I do know, like from the Tuckrows, that family has given the Amber's family permission to visit where Amber's remains were found. So there was a group of youth horseback riders from this area that they were out horseback riding, and apparently one of the boys, they were riding their horses in the tree line, and the horse that the boy was riding got spooked by the light glimmering on this is terrible, which was Amber's skull. You want to slow down here? Yeah, so if you just want to pull over here to your right, there it is, the no trespassing. So if we had the ability, we would walk or drive kind of like right where I'm directly pointing, kind of where the tree line starts to bend, like the birch or whatever that is. Yeah. Within that tree line, within a few feet, that's where Amber's remains were found.
Should we walk in there despite the no trespassing?
And that's the thing, like, I've always been very cautious coming out here because, again, we don't know who's responsible. Obviously, who's responsible doesn't want to get caught, so...
In my 25 years as a reporter, I've been to a lot of crime scenes. It seemed like a strange place to leave a body. The field felt really open, like you'd be very exposed walking or driving in there. There's a farmhouse not far away, and it's a busy area. Even on a snowy day in March, there were people driving around nearby. Here's the police officer, John Respett, again.
My personal opinion is it's an individual that is, I want to use the term comfortable with the area. Comfortable in that they know their way around the range roads and township roads. Comfortable enough to have contemplated that type of risk to dispose of human remains. You know, that tells me a little bit about the individual, that perhaps they're not considering, you know, whether they're putting themselves out there in terms of, you know, somebody driving by and wondering whether there's car trouble or something happening that they might stop. And yeah, it just seems odd.
After being missing for 2 years, how was Amber found just days after the tape was released? How could that be a coincidence?
I was a part of the recovery scene. I think we spent approximately a week on site there. And just based on circumstance and forensic evidence, I do believe it was simply a coincidence.
So I personally believe that was divine intervention. I had helped arrange a sweat lodge ceremony for Tootsie. And in that ceremony, Tootsie specifically asked for Amber to be found. And as you know, a few days later, Amber was found. That's my spiritual side. Like, as horrific and heartbreaking, that must have been for Tootsie and the family to not find Amber alive and unharmed, like to have her found in that way, like that's so traumatic. But she was found and she was identified.
We walked just a little bit off the road into the field. April Eve said a prayer, and we laid tobacco there for Amber and smudged with sage.
In Crater's name. Hi, Kanana Skumpton.
Elders say wind brings change, and that day the wind was icy and frigid cold. We stayed until we were all chilled, our feet and hands aching. 3 birds gathered on a wire watching us, and the poplar trees swayed along the edge of the field.
You know, when I come out here too, like I think about one of our community cookums, Cookum Kathy. She always talks about like the trees, like how the trees know, like they hold the secrets of others, right? Like whoever brought Amber out here, you know, there are witnesses, you know, to what happened, and we firmly believe the truth will come out, whether it be by divine intervention or a confession. Like literally there's people praying from all over the world to solve this case.
A few days later, I heard something outside my bedroom window. And when I drew back the curtain and looked outside, there was a raven right there. I've never seen a raven anywhere around my house before or since, and it looked at me for a moment, then flew away. So close I could hear the rustle of its wings through the glass. I thought about this a lot after it happened. When I talked to an elder about it, she told me to smudge with sweetgrass and thank the raven for coming to me. She said it could have been sent by Amber, or could even be Amber. But be careful, she told me. Ravens are tricksters. Things aren't always how they appear. The secrets of the place where Amber was found go far beyond her. Amber is one of 5 women whose remains were found in that area. 2 of them, Edna Bernard and Katie Ballantyne, were found before Amber. 2 others, Corey Ottenbright and Dolores Brower, were found after. The women disappeared over a span of 8 years, and all but one of them was Indigenous. With the exception of Amber, they all went missing from the same area of Edmonton, and their bodies were found within a couple minutes' drive of each other. 5 women within 5 miles. No one's been charged in any of their deaths.
It kind of, for me, it goes back to, okay, well, why isn't the county of Leduc, the city of Leduc, doing more to address the murders of these women?
Yeah.
These horrifically violent murders of these women. Like, if I had my way, you know, there'd be billboards and awareness everywhere, like, you know, let's find these killers or this killer. Like, who is the Leduc County killer or killers?
It's really striking that there's 5 women found within 8 kilometers.
Yeah. It's, maybe they're not all connected, but maybe they are, right? Like, we don't know.
I would say it's unlikely that one person would be responsible for all.
This is Staff Sergeant Travis McKenzie, who oversees Alberta's Missing Persons Unit and the Historical Homicide Unit, which is in charge of Amber's case now.
But you should never discount the fact that a person could out be there being a serial killer. Once again, a lot of the homicides that were occurring at that same time focused on highly vulnerable girls in and around the Edmonton area. I know the circumstances of Amber's, it does contrast from other locations where human remains were found, but I'm still very open and aware that they could be related, and that's you know, as we've seen before, if we can solve one, maybe we can solve more.
So, you know, if we have DNA, we could talk about certainty, but we're now dealing with probability.
This is Kim Rossmo. He didn't work on this case, but he's a criminologist, a former Vancouver police officer, and an expert in using geographic profiling to find serial killers.
So the pattern of the body disposals are a lot more interesting. So, okay, if I'm related to you and you're related to your sister, then I'm related to your sister, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so same logic applies here. If, for just sake of argument, Bernard and Valentine were killed by the same person, and Ottenbright and Bernard were killed by the same person, then obviously Valentine and Ottenbright were killed by the same person. Okay?
Yep.
Barring some other information, all we have in the data that you sent me are spatial temporal clusters. But 3, what I call 3, 4, and 5, Ottenbright, Brower, and Takaro.
Yep, Takaro.
I mean, they're just really, really close together.
Yes.
And given the range of possibilities, you know, again, there's some things that, assuming you've got these mapped relatively accurately, this is a really tight cluster. And I don't know if that would be likely to happen at all by chance. And that's just kind of really, really strange. This 3, 4, and 5 is really unusual and almost, you know, I would say high probability they're the same offender.
Hmm.
And, of course, that includes Takaro, who initially I was thinking, well, Takaro is like 6 years after the last one. And that goes against the temporal aspects. But, you know, I just find it kind of hard to believe that a separate killer would just find that exact same spot, you know. And assuming you've got the map correctly and assuming I'm not missing something that I don't know because I'm not from the area.
That brings us to the notorious Edmonton killer, Thomas Svekla. He's currently in prison for the murder of a woman in 2005. Police have named Svekla as a suspect in the deaths of Corey Ottenbright and Dolores Brower, the two women found closest to Amber. In fact, they've said, or at least strongly implied, that he's responsible for a lot of other murders around Edmonton at the time, even if he's never been charged. I think that's one of the reasons there isn't more focus on the idea of the Leduc County killer. If it seems like the killer was probably Svekla, he's already serving life in prison. Senator Paula Simons, when she was a columnist in Edmonton, wrote that, quote, "It would certainly be neat and tidy if we could make Svekla our all-purpose boogeyman. It would be comforting to assume we'd already got our serial killer off the streets." But police have never charged him with any more murders, and he couldn't have killed Amber because he was already in prison when she disappeared. So if Amber and the women found around her are the victims of the same serial killer, it wasn't Thomas Svekla.
Now, if the roles were reversed now, my sister and Evangeline, it'd be a different story. Because Evangeline's white, that's right.
Our people, they don't trust cops. Because look what they did. They just came and take children away.
Because a lot of these murders remain unsolved.
Many. Yeah, most more are unsolved than not.
That's next time on In Her Defense, 50th Street. In Her Defense, 50th Street is made by Kasia Mihailovich and me, Jana Pruden. Our sound design and mix is by David Crosby. Field recording by Amber Bracken. Our managing editor is Matt Frainer. Thanks also to Mark Ipe, James Keller, and Angela Pacenza. Our cover art is a painting of Amber Tuckerow by Lauren Crazybull. I've been a huge fan of her work for a long time, and I'm very grateful she agreed to do this beautiful portrait for us. You can see more of her art on her website, laurencrazybull.com. Our theme song is No Surrender by Ms.PAN. Art direction is by Ming Wong. Our episode titles were translated into Cree by Dorothy Thunder. Our episode today was called What the Trees Know.
What the trees know? So kîkwây, mîtosak, ê-kiskêyihtahkik.
Okay, that one's going to be a challenge.
So kîkwây is the what? Mîtosak is the trees. ê-kiskêyihtahkik, what they know. Kiskêyitah is to know something.
ê-kiskêyihtahkik.
And the trees talk to each other. And they can hear you. Right? Everything to us has a spirit. And the trees too, you're not alone out there, right? The trees are there with you. The land is there, so everything, having that living spirit gives you that feeling, that safeness. It's supposed to be safe.
Additional Cree language consultation and translation by Barbara Scott. Thank you to Elder Joanne Saddleback, Carrie Benjo, Danielle Parody, and Amber Bracken for cultural guidance and feedback on our drafts. In Her Defense, 50th Street is recorded at Gabby Road Studio on Treaty 6 territory in Edmonton, also known as amiskwaciy-wâskahikan, or Beaver Hills House. Support is available for residential school survivors and their families through the National Crisis Line at 1-800-721-0066. Kinanaskam T'nawau. Thanks for listening.